Good morning, everyone, and welcome to part one of our two-part Biosketch workshop series. Today, we are focused on how to craft a competitive biosketch for NSF and NIH proposals. My name is Nicole Viverito. I'm the Research Development Coordinator for Health and Life Sciences here in the Office of Research at Florida State. And I'm joined today by two wonderful colleagues from the FSU Libraries. We have Renee Julian, Director of STEM Libraries here at Florida State, and Semi Reda, the Academic Health Data Librarian at FSU. So thank you all for joining us for this series. So why are we here? So we have learned recently that in 2023, the National Science Foundation is going to require investigators to use SciENcv to prepare, certify, and submit their biosketches for every individual who is designated as a senior personnel on an application. And so with that, we also know that other federal agencies are likely to follow soon after, because there is a movement towards a uniform biosketch for all federal agency applications for funding. And this is really to streamline the process, not only for investigators who apply to multiple agencies, but also for reviewers who might have expertise that falls under multiple agencies. And so we're just here to equip everybody with the skills to be able to meet these requirements next year. What this means for those of you who've already submitted applications in the past is that the fillable PDF and Microsoft Word templates that were allowable in the past will no longer be permitted to be used as the format for biosketches that are submitted in future applications. And so those existing documents can be used as a basis for what you're going to create in SciENcv, but you won't be able to upload them into applications anymore. And then the other thing that we've learned from program officers at these federal agencies is that they're really promoting the use of ORCiD or MyNCBI or both to help facilitate some pre-population of investigator information in your citations and other research products, to reduce the administrative burden on those who are making the switch into SciENcv who may not be already using it. So we're going to talk through a lot of the different ways that we can make this process, this transition to SciENcv as easy as possible for everybody. And hopefully that will prepare you all for the 2023 changes that are coming. So our objectives for today, we're going to start by looking at the various ways that you can import your citations into your SciENcv biosketch, and that's going to begin with a quick review of ORCiD, and then also a virtual tutorial through MyNCBI to make sure that you have all of your research products, whether they're publications or otherwise, available to you to put into your biosketch in SciENcv. And then we're going to actually walk through the process of building your biosketch for NSF or NIH using SciENcv. And so we'll do a full virtual tutorial for that. And as we go through today's presentation, we hope that you'll all click along with us as we go through these platforms. The goal for today is really to get you started on building your own biosketch. And as we go, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat. And we'll also have ample time at the end of today's presentation for Q&A and troubleshooting for any issues that you run into as we go. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Renee, and he's going to review ORCiD to start, and then MyNCBI.
Thanks, Nicole. One of the reasons we're talking about ORCiD is because there are many different ways you can log into NCBI, MyNCBI. I'll show you that in a moment. And one of them is ORCiD. And you can also use ORCiD to import your citations and information from ORCiD into MyNCBI. So ORCiD is a nonprofit organization and identity technology that enables the FSU faculty, staff, and students in the management of their digital scholarly identity, and allows the university to assess their research activities more efficiently. And there are other tools that do the same thing, but could you go to the next slide, please, Nicole? There are different ways you can add your citations into ORCiD. You can do them if you have DOIs or direct object identifiers available. You can add those directly, and in many cases, it'll populate all the rest of the information you need. You can use PubMed to search. If you're familiar with uploading and downloading BibTeX documents, you can use that. And you can also use the search and link feature, which uses tools like DataCite and Scopus, which is run by Elsevier, to give you updates when there's new scholarship and new citations to be added into ORCiD. In a lot of cases, your scholarly activity will get updated automatically into ORCiD. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see that you can access ORCiD from your MyFSU portal, and you can sign in with single sign-on using your FSU credentials. You can use ORCiD. Actually, you can import information from ORCiD into or export, I'm sorry, into feeds. So you can actually use ORCiD to save you tons of time and energy with P&T binders and preparing CVs and things like that. And if you all have never used ORCiD before, you don't have an ORCiD ID or ORCiD yet, I would encourage you to join a workshop that's being taught next week. And we can link you to that. When I'm done presenting, I'll put a link in the chat. October 25th, and it's an introduction to ORCiD. And there's also materials on ORCiD in the ORD learning resource page, if I'm not mistaken, and in their YouTube channel. So those things are available there as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that we can do a MyNCBI demo. So let me do this. And apologies for not for looking away as I kind of walk through this, but I have a different screen here, so I'm looking into a different monitor. So the URL is ncbi.mlm.nih.gov. And you can log in several different ways. Here's some of the different methods. You can even log in, you can find FSU, and you can log in with your FSU ID as well. But I'm going to use ORCiD. And again, it requires a third-party login, so you'll have to use one of these tools. And I'm going to log in through my institution. Well, sorry, it already suggested that for me. And then you have to click on this acknowledgement. It's an information exchange. And here's what is called your dashboard. So most relevant to this workshop, you have your bibliography, you have your CVs that you've created. And what I'm going to show you is how to look at your bibliography and add citations and manage it. So I'm going to click on Manage My Bibliography. And you see that there are already works in here. I didn't actually have to add any of these to MyNCBI because they imported all this information was imported from ORCiD the first time that I logged in to this tool to use it. So that's one of the advantages to using ORCiD. But you can add citations to this yourself different ways. So I'm going to click on the Add Citations menu. You can look things up in PubMed, and you can actually do search. You can search for items and link them that way. You can also manually add the citation. So if you have the article or the book chapter with you, you can put that information in manually. And then the other way is you can actually upload it from a file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Zotero, which is a citation manager. If you don't use citation managers or would like to learn how to use them, please contact me or any of your academic liaisons at FSU Libraries. We'll be happy to walk you through what different tools are available for use. But for the purposes of today, I'm just going to quickly show you. I'm in Zotero and I have my different collections. And this is an example of some works that I found that weren't included in ORCiD. So I'm going to right click this and I'm going to export this collection. And it's important to use this format, RIS, so that you can bring it into MyNCBI. And I'm going to save this to my desktop. And you can see I practiced. So I already have it saved to my desktop. And so I'm going to upload this from my desktop. Biosketch examples. And then you can see that 3 were created, 2 were updated because I forgot to delete them before the workshop. And that is sort of how to do that part. You can also share your bibliography with this URL publicly if you need to do that, or share public links. And I believe that is everything I have to show for the NCBI dashboard.
So we have a couple questions in the chat related to ORCiD, if you don't mind, Renee.
Let's take a look at those.
So some trouble previously importing citations from ORCiD into SciENcv, and whether there are any settings in ORCiD that investigators can adjust to help make that import a little bit smoother.
I don't know of any adjustments off the top of my head. I think if I'd be happy to meet to work with you to try to figure out the specific issue. If there's like something that's coming up, like a reoccurring metadata import issue where there's something that we can see is like a pattern that we can fix citations.
I can keep playing around with it, but I had another question.
Yeah.
In MyNCBI and publications, there are a couple of duplicates, and I tried to select those, and then I went to the tutorial, and it said that under the edit my citations, there's supposed to be a delete command, and that doesn't appear in mine.
I'm gonna share my screen. You're still in MyNCBI, right? So, okay. Let me share my screen again. So what I did is, I think this is one of the ones I added. And so I just went to manage my citations. And then I've got this option here to delete citations.
I know, so I don't have that. It just says export. It's not appearing in mine when I scroll up or scroll down.
You figure out, I can during the second part of the presentation while Semi's talking, I can see if I can troubleshoot that.
Okay, thanks.
See if I can find like a support link or something.
Thank you.
Because that's really strange. What browser are you using?
Firefox.
Maybe I would try switching browsers just because maybe that works.
Okay, thanks.
But other than that, I can keep troubleshooting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can tell you personally, I've had better luck with using Chrome as opposed to other browsers. So sometimes that can be a factor.
Thank you.
All right, Simi, it's all you, I think. Or are there the other questions that I didn't answer?
There's one more question about whether you can do it in the reverse direction, whether you can take your papers that are already in MyNCBI and have them represented in your ORCiD account. And I believe you can do that by linking your ORCiD to your MyNCBI if you haven't already. But Renee, you might have more information on that process.
I believe that to be true, but I haven't done it that way because I had an existing ORCiD, and then so that's the MyNCBI was the newer tool for me. If that doesn't work, I can look into it under the search and link function in ORCiD to see if there's a tool that would do that. But I'm pretty sure there is. I would imagine there is.
I also have a question regarding MyNCBI because some of the bibliography, they have question mark, they have exclamation point. So I wonder what that means.
Oh yeah, like the yellow, like it'll be like a
I can share my screen. That helps.
So what you're referring to is whether your publications meet a public access requirement. So if you have any grants that are associated with your publication listed in your acknowledgement section, it'll prompt you to put that grant related information. If that project was funded by a federal agency, it has to become public access based on those requirements that have been set out by the US most recent guidance. And so if it has an exclamation point, it means it needs your attention to link any federal funding that was associated with your publication.
Because they said not compliant, citation not in NIH.
Right, yeah. So that's all the public access requirements for if that project was federally funded.
I thought that was, we put acknowledgement usually at the end of the paper.
Yeah,
So
and so, sometimes it doesn't automatically attach those grants in your MyNCBI. But when we get to that demonstration, I can show you how to add those awards. It's a separate process that doesn't affect your ability to use those citations. But with those new requirements from the federal government to make science public access, that will become a more important step in maintaining your bibliography.
yeah, I also try to figure out the connecting ORCiD with NCBI. Somehow you said there are ways. I don't know how, because I do not want to make another effort to duplicate what I did at NCBI. While I have everything at NCBI.
Sure, and you don't necessarily need both to be able to create your biosketch. So if all of your publications are already in MyNCBI, you don't need to also have them in ORCiD, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, but I think like what you said is that for fees, for some future like promotion, it will be easier from ORCiD. I don't know if that's possible from NCBI.
Yeah, we'll look into it and we'll try to troubleshoot that at the end of the presentation in our Q&A section.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we've got Semi up next.
All right, now we are going to talk about how to build a biosketch within SciENcv if you don't have an ORCiD or if you just don't want to use your ORCiD account. So we are going to talk about how to make an NIH biosketch and an NSF biosketch, but before we get to that, we want to talk about the differences between the two. So the first difference is page allowance. The NIH biosketch requires it to be 5 pages or less, while the NSF generally looks for 2 to 3 pages. The second difference is with section headers, and you'll see this when we get into it when I do the live demo, but for example, under NIH, they ask for education and training. For NSF, they ask for professional preparation. These mean essentially the same thing, but they're different headings. NIH also asks for a personal statement, which the NSF does not require. And the NSF asks for synergistic activities. And I'll explain what that means when we get to the demo. The last difference I want to talk about is the investigator scoring criteria. So the NIH, when they're evaluating submissions, they specifically rate the investigators, and that has an impact on how your entire proposal is evaluated. The NSF does not have a specific criteria for rating the investigator. So when you're submitting to the NIH, your biosketch may be even more important. That's something to keep in mind. All right, now I'm going to pull up my NCBI. Can everybody see that? All right, so this is the MyNCBI page. This is the page that Renee was just on. As you can see, I'm already logged in. But if I wasn't logged in, I'll just show you once again how to log in. So you click other login options. If you didn't have an ORCiD, you could look up Florida State University. And because my FSU account is already logged in, it takes me right to here. So we are going to look with SciENcv, which is right here. Click Manage Science and click Manage SciENcv. And you would click Create a New Document. So let's start with the NIH biosketch, and we're going to make NIH. And I'm going to start with a blank document and hit create. So this is what you have to start with. For education and training, you would put any degree, any training program, any certificate, anything you got, particularly things that are relevant to your study. And you would put in reverse chronological order. So I have a degree from FAMU. In public health. You skip that. And my field of study was epidemiology and biostatistics. I attended from August 2016 until May 2018. So I would include that there. For your personal statement, you would include a statement explaining why you're the most qualified person. And why you want this to be accepted in the first place to whatever project you're applying for. In your personal statement, you may reference some work you've done previously. And you may want to cite some of that. So you would click here and click citations. And if you get to this point and you realize, oh, I don't have anything in my bibliography, that is okay. You can open it up in a different tab right here. Just click go to my bibliography. And just add citations right here. And so you want to add these two. My internet's being slow. I apologize for that.
All right. Can everybody see my NCBI? Okay. So we were in creating a new document, correct?
Yes, it was creating an NIH document.
Starting with a blank document, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I talked about education and training. I talked a little bit about the personal statement, but what I was saying is if you added something to your bibliography and then you refresh the page, if my internet was working, you would see that it would show up right there and you would be able to cite things. It would look just like this. So you could add something right there if you wanted to. And then you would be able to go back to your page and add a citation to your personal statement if you wanted to. You don't have to include any citations in your personal statement, but if you reference a study that you've done, it might be beneficial. Okay, so for the next question, for the next section, that is position, scientific appointments, and honors. And for position scientific appointments, you want to go over your career history, any your current role that you're serving in, and any appointments. And any appointments that you have received, especially things that are relevant to your project. So you would put in whatever your current role is at the very least, and all the previous roles that you had. So as you can see, Nicole is putting in a few of her positions. And then for honors, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you have won any awards or received any honors or titles, you would put that in as well. The final section is contribution to science. You would put any studies or any citations that you did not include in your personal statement, you would want to add to this section, just so they can see some of the work you've done, in particular things that are most recent or most relevant to the specific project that you're putting in, and you want to put them in the order of importance. And you can see at the very bottom right there, you can download your entire biosketch as the PDF in the bottom right. You can download it as a PDF, a Word document, or an XML file. Make sure you look through it and make sure, as I said, it is under 5 pages. If it exceeds 5 pages, you may want to look at your personal statement and make sure that that doesn't go on for too long. Okay, so if you go back to the SciENcv page, you can see how to make an NSF biosketch as well. Create a new document, NSF biosketch, and you can just call that NSF example. And click create. You can see right away that the headings look a little bit different. The top heading is professional preparation. Again, this is just your education and your training. The same type of stuff you would put in your NIH biosketch, you would put that here.
This isn't my actual degree. I'm just making things up.
Don't make things up in your actual biosketch.
No, yeah, use your real
This
credentials.
is just an example. For appointments, again, this is the same thing as your, think about this as like your experience section on your resume. Similar to the NIH, put any positions that you're working in, including your current position. Okay, as for products, and this is any citations that you want to include, you can see they have 2 subsections: products most closely related to your proposed project and other significant products. So you want to, again, this is citations, anything that is related to your product, anything is related to your project or most relevant, you want to include that in there, particularly in that first section. So as you can see, it's very similar to the NIH. You can take them from both ORCiD or your NCBI bibliography. Okay, and for the last section, I want to talk about this a bit, and this is your synergistic activities. So for this, they're looking for ways your work has affected the world around you. And you want to put 5 examples, up to 5 examples in the order of relevancy. And the main thing here is you don't want to use any compound examples, so anything that contains multiple components. So for example, you don't want to say, I was a member of X committee, Y committee, and Z committee, because that's technically 3 different examples, and they really don't want that. You want every single example to be very specific. So you can say, I was the member of this committee and we did this. You want to be very specific with these, which means you'll be able to put fewer items since each item has to be more specific. But that means you really want to prioritize things that you have done recently and things that are most relevant to your specific submission. And we'll get into a little bit of this when Nicole talks about the various tips. So you can see her examples is volunteering with a community organization focused on scientific education. You wouldn't put, for example, all of your volunteer opportunities if you had multiple different ones. You would put them, you would make it specific. So that's a good example of synergistic activities. You can see at the bottom, you can download it as a PDF. Remember, the NSF biosketch is 2 to 3 pages, so make sure it's the appropriate length. All right, and I think that's all I have to talk about for these. Does anyone have any questions? All right, I apologize again for my internet troubles. It doesn't usually happen, but I think we made it work.
All right, and I just wanted to show you what these look like when you do download them out of SciENcv. So this is the NIH biosketch format. So if your product does not look like this and it hasn't been approved for a date, past when you're submitting, it's probably the wrong format. Generally, SciENcv is pretty good about letting you know that it's the right format. And this is the NSF Biosketch. And again, it'll show you on the left-hand side here, all of your different sections as well. So if it does go multiple pages, it'll take you to each of your separate sections. All right, and so we're actually going to go back to SciENcv to show a couple of other ways that you can use it to streamline when you're preparing multiple proposals. So once you've created your profile in SciENcv and you've made your first biosketch, what you can do is actually use that as a backbone for future applications or future biosketches. And there's a lot of different ways to pre-populate data so that you don't have to enter it manually necessarily. And so I want to show you some different ways that you can do that. The first one being that a lot of times people will create a kind of master document of all of their different activities that is way too long, but then once you have that master document, you can trim it down to fit your various proposals that you are preparing. And so for that, I'm going to show you an old biosketch of mine. And what I want you to note is that it will tell you in this bright red box that this is an old format that's no longer accepted by your agency that you're applying for. And this is a really helpful tool within SciENcv to make sure that you are meeting the guidelines for biosketches for your agency, because they do change all the time, as we know. And so going through SciENcv directly is actually a really great way to make sure that your biosketch meets the criteria and that your proposal isn't returned to you or rejected because your biosketch was in the wrong format. So that's one of the major pros to using SciENcv. And so this is an old one. And if I want to upgrade it to the current NIH biosketch format, I just do that. It's going to create a document name, but you can update it yourself. And it is in the NIH format from an existing document as the original data source. And then you just hit create. And so what you see will happen here is that it's going to auto-populate all of my previous information from my old biosketch, so I don't have to recreate it every time. So again, once you have one, it's really easy to use as a backbone for other applications. And it's already formatted for the new biosketch requirements for NIH. So that's really helpful, and you don't really have to do a lot. The main thing you'll want to probably update is your personal statement to make sure that it is relevant to the study that you are proposing. And so for this particular application, I believe this was for an NIH R34. I talked about, sorry, this is hard to read in this format. Let's go back. So in this particular personal statement, I introduced myself, my background, my relevant studies that I've done for this particular population and this line of research, demonstrating that I was the principal investigator on projects, and so I'm prepared to lead this project, and then a statement of the objectives of this proposal and how my previous experience in all of these areas qualifies me to lead that project and what my unique contribution will be to that project. And again, highlighting the most relevant publications to this current proposal. That's what you want to highlight here in your personal statement section. You can include up to 4, but you don't have to include 4. So don't just include something that's accessory if it's not directly relevant to what you are proposing. Again, my positions and honors, and then your contributions to science section. You want to make sure that these are very focused and that you order them in order of most relevant to your current proposal. So you want to make sure that whichever contribution to science speaks directly to your role on this project is listed first, so that that's what reviewers will see. And again, within each contribution to science, you'll have 4 citations, and you can update this. So if you've had a new publication or preprint or data set related to a contribution to science, you can edit these. And they each have a different tab. And I can select an additional citation from either my bibliography or ORCiD that is related to that particular thing. So yeah, as you work more in an area, you can just continue to add citations for that contribution to science. So that's one way to use existing data for a new biosketch. The other way you can do it is if you hit create a new document and you want to import your data. So we'll do an NSF biosketch this time. And we want to use an external source of data. So for my account, and I'll show you where to do this, I have several different platforms linked to my NCBI. And so I can either import my data from ERA Commons or from ORCiD. So any information you have in your profiles on those platforms will be automatically uploaded into the top sections of your biosketch. And so I'm going to upload data from ORCiD into this NSF biosketch format and hit create. And here again, it's going to auto-populate my professional preparation, my appointments that are already listed in ORCiD. And then all I would have to do is to select the products that are most related to my project and then other significant products, and then my synergistic activities. So that's another way to use existing data to make this process a little bit faster. And again, you can see here, since I have my ORCiD account linked to my NCBI, it's going to put my ORCiD ID at the top of my biosketch as well. So about linking accounts. So when you're in MyNCBI, you can go to account settings. And there's a section on linked accounts here. And you can see I have my ERA Commons, I have an ORCiD ID, and I also have a login.gov, which lets you get into all government platforms with a single sign-on login that is 2-factor authenticated. So you can update these to make sure that you have as many relevant accounts linked to your MyNCBI as possible. And that should help with streamlining, importing a lot of that data. And similarly, you can search here for all of your different account names. So you could click Florida State University and it would log you in, etc. So once you have those accounts linked, it does give you more opportunities to import data. So any questions about using existing data for your biosketch?
I have a question. How did you put your Gmail account there?
So that's my login.gov account. So that's my single sign-on for all government websites. You just go to, let's see, login.gov. You go here and you can create one account for private access to all participating government agencies. And for that one, I use my Gmail in case I ever lose access to my institutional email. So that's a nice way to have a backup in case you do move institutions. You're always linked to something permanent.
Thank you. I also I would like to link, because I saw earlier you linked your multiple accounts and my NCBI. I'm in my account setting, and I only have ERA Commons linked here.
Yeah, so go ahead and click change.
Okay. I'm here.
And then you will search for whichever of those, sorry, this is slow loading, but you'll search for whichever of those accounts you want to add. So if you have a login.gov, you would search login.gov down here.
Ah, I see. But I can also search ORCiD because I think this is a great way to like streamline because yeah.
Yeah, it's not letting me search for anything I have already linked. But you could do National Science Foundation.
Yes, is that Fastlane? I think the.
So you would do this NSF researcher login.
Uh-huh.
And if you had an NSF account, it would link you the same way an ERA Commons account would link.
I see. I searched the ORCiD. It doesn't return anything. Something went wrong. Please try again.
Okay. We can troubleshoot after the end of the presentation again on this. But that's one way to get all of your accounts linked together. And you might have to do the same within ORCiD. But we can talk about that after. Okay. Any other questions before we move on to some pro tips? Did I answer the question about how to structure your personal statement for Emily?
I saw the example, but I was trying to deal with a different issue, so I didn't hear everything you said. Will this be part of the pro tips as well?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I'll just wait then.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk about, now that you have the framework of your biosketch, you've built it out in SciENcv, how do you make it most compelling and most competitive to ensure that the reviewers know that you're the perfect person to lead or to be a co-investigator on this proposal? And so one of the things that we tried to do was talk to as many people as possible who either sit on study section or program officers or have had lots of success in applying for federal funding, and get some pro tips from them. So the first person we talked to was actually a program officer from the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Disorders, Dr. Brodney. And she said to us, she said, the biosketch is no place for humility. Just brag about yourself. You don't want to say, you don't want to use weak language. You don't want the reviewers to have any reason to think that you cannot lead the project. So use powerful language wherever possible. And so some examples of this, this is a list from a professional development series on LinkedIn. These are some examples of strong verbs that you can substitute in on your biosketch, but also your CV, your resume, other personal statements you have to write for applications for awards, describing your professional activities or your contributions to science. There are lots of other options that aren't listed here, but this is just a starting point. And basically, the goal is to avoid saying things like, I was given the opportunity, or I was fortunate to learn, but to use more active language. So rather you would say, I joined, or I connected with experts. And that is a way to show that you weren't, you had agency in those skills that you acquired or those products that you developed. So some examples we'll go through here. On the left-hand side, you see leadership examples. So I managed, I directed, I supervised. That's a big one if you're mentoring as part of your application. For teamwork, you always want to talk about being a good collaborator. You don't do research alone anymore. And so, it's important to say how you contributed your expertise to the broader goals of the project. For achievements that you're listing, these are pretty good ones to use, but anything that you were invited to deliver a lecture and you completed, however many courses of study in a particular area, you formulated the basis of that project that was awarded, that new investigator award, for example. Same for communication. The biggest one here being that you authored however many publications for the most part, but other presentations that you gave. And then if you're doing community outreach in particular, connections that you're making out to those you are serving through your research. We're always building upon and growing, the things that we've done in our pilot work. And so describing how you've enhanced, either what you've done previously or built upon what others have done previously to maximize or optimize procedures or pieces of technology. And then the creative side of things that you are building, designing, developing, unique interventions, etc. And then finally, we use all these words all the time, research related examples, assessing, testing, etc. You've seen these a lot. The other thing that we've heard from pretty much everyone we talk to, but especially program officers, is that you don't want to just use the same biosketch over and over and over again. Reviewers can tell, POs can tell when you just kind of copied and pasted, didn't put in a more recent or a more relevant citation, didn't tailor that personal statement to describe your role. They really can tell. And so a lot of the comments that we got from our senior faculty here at FSU are really about making sure that you take the time to craft this attachment to your application. And so we heard this from Dr. Budwani in the College of Nursing, and she gives a great example here about a differentiating and complementary role statement at the end of your personal statement. And so, you've already described your background as far as your education, your roles at your institution, projects that you've led. But then at the end of that personal statement, what is it about all of those things that has prepared you for the role you're going to serve on this particular project? And so making sure that you really sell to the reviewers that you are the perfect person to either lead this project or to specialize in a particular assessment, for example. She also echoed what we said earlier about leading with the contributions to science, the publications, and the projects or products that are most aligned with the funding mechanism or the proposed study aims. You want to put those right up in front of reviewers, so it's the first thing that they see, and they know that that work is the most relevant to your proposal. You don't want them to have to go all the way down to the bottom of your biosketch to find the most relevant contribution to science, because they'll be confused why you said that you're the perfect person to be conducting that particular assessment if it's not right up front for them to see what you've done in that area already. And then the other thing that she mentioned was that you don't just want to fill up space for the sake of filling up space. Be concise, make sure that you give them all of the information that they absolutely need and nothing more. You don't want to spread it out just to make it look like you've done more. And this is a particularly good advice for earlier career investigators who might not feel like they have as many contributions to science or might not have as many citations to include. That's okay. You just want to make sure that they know that you've done all the things that you needed to do to get to that particular point in your career. And then for NSF, we talked to Dr. Shatruk in chemistry and biochemistry, and he said that for NSF, having a great biosketch will not compensate for blunders in your proposal text. As Semi mentioned, the reviewers are really evaluating your science, your broader impacts, and not how great you are. But having a poorly prepared biosketch can damage your proposal by biasing the reviewers. So you do want to make sure that you pay attention to it, even though it's not a scoring criteria. And so from his perspective, the two most important items to include in the biosketch are making sure, again, that you list the publications that are most relevant to the proposed research. And he also notes that this is one of the only places in your entire application where you're allowed to include URLs. And so you can link to specific publications or products here. So if you have a software that you've developed that is publicly available and you want to link to that, you can put those URLs in your NSF biosketch. And then also for that synergistic activities section, you want to make sure that those activities are recent, again, making sure that this is up to date, that you're not using the same old biosketch, but that also those synergistic activities are diverse. So don't just list 5 committees that you served on. You want to have a variety of activities that you're doing related to your science that are, show that you are making an impact, not just in papers. And then some specific tips for early career biosketches. So for fellowships and career development awards, you want to be sure that there's a statement of your career goals in your biosketch, and how the training that you're going to receive through that career development award is absolutely essential for you to achieve those goals. This is particularly important for NIH fellowships and career development awards, that there has to be synergy across all of your different documents, that your biosketch is linked with your personal statement section and is listed with your career development goals for that award. It all has to make sense together, and mentioning it in multiple places will help reviewers see that. And then also, I mentioned this earlier, you might wish to just highlight the 2 or 3 contributions to science or research products that you consider the most significant. You don't have to use all 5 contributions to science, for example, or use all 5 products, for example. And then another thing to note is that research products can include things that aren't just manuscripts or publications. So there are a lot of things that you can link within your biosketch as long as they have a discoverable location somewhere. So for example, conference abstracts that are published, audio or video products that you've created related to your science, publicly available databases or other research materials. If you've developed an educational aid or a curriculum or an intervention that's publicly available, you can share that as a product in your biosketch, etc. And then also recently, NIH and I believe also NSF have started allowing preprints to be cited in your biosketch, but they do have specific citation requirements, and those do change frequently because the nature of preprints is pretty new. So just make sure you check with your agency about their requirements for citing preprints in your biosketch. So that is all that we have as far as pro tips. Comment on the enforcement of rules on synergistic activities. You mentioned not to combine stuff into bullets. Under the impression that you are mainly just limited by space. Do proposals get sent back for formatting of synergistic activities? So for synergistic activities, I'm not sure about whether proposals get sent back, but I think this speaks to Dr. Shatruck's point on biasing the reviewers. If you have one giant block of text as a synergistic activity that lists all of the different things that you've done with a ton of commas, that's probably going to bias them against the application a little bit. Putting a URL in your synergistic activities citizen science website link, I can double check on that for you. I believe it would be okay. But yeah, the biosketch is kind of the only place that you can put a URL. Any other questions that we can try to tackle? All right, well, we do have a lot of additional resources for everybody. So last year, the FSU Libraries did do an ORCiD workshop, and that is recorded on YouTube. We'll share these slides and the links and stuff, but as Renee mentioned, there's also another one of these workshops coming up October 25th. We can drop that link in the chat if y'all are interested in registering for that next week. And ORCiD has a lot of support available to those who are trying to create accounts, link accounts, import citations. Their support page is very helpful. And we have also linked tutorials from MyNCBI. The National Library of Medicine maintains an awesome playlist of walkthroughs of how to use NCBI. Some frequently asked questions for SciENcv, for NIH biosketches. And then I wanted to point out particularly this NSF proposal guidance. This is what the guidance that's going to be changing for 2023. And so this is where we learned that the biosketches are going to be required to go through SciENcv for 2023. And so as soon as this new guidance is published, it'll have a take effect date, and that's when proposals will need to ensure that they're using SciENcv for the biosketches, and I think also for other support. So keep an eye on this one in particular, because that'll be the first one to come through with the requirements. I also want to encourage everybody to please join us for part 2 of this workshop series. So we're going to have an in-person peer review cafe at the Drac Science Library on December 8th. So we'll have coffee and tea, and we'd love for people to bring the biosketches that you're creating in SciENcv and have other FSU researchers and us review them to really optimize them for your next application. So if you would like to register, the QR code is there, and we will drop a link in the chat as we go through Q&A. But definitely please join us in person for this. We'd love to see you. And this is just our contact information if you do have questions. And I will go ahead and open up the floor to any other Q&A or troubleshooting, what we can help you with that you ran into as we went.
Hi, my name is Chelsea. Thank you so much. I had to step out for another meeting, so I may have missed this, but I'm doing an NIH resubmission on November 16th. So my committee does not need to do the Science Direct Biosketches. Is that correct?
So for NIH, these requirements have not taken effect yet. So
Okay.
whatever format they had for their biosketches should be okay. I would just double check the date at the top of their biosketch to make sure that that format is approved through the date of your submission.
Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, this is not required. We're just trying to get people ready ahead of the game. So you should be good.
Thank you.
Hey, I have another question. I tried to link, I think you recommend login.gov. I try to streamline on my account. I need to find where I can put my NSF and FastLab and also ERA comments at login.gov, for instance, and also ORCiD and NCBI, everything in one place.
To link those to your login.gov?
Yes, can I do that? Oh, yeah, I'm at login.com, but I didn't locate where I can add other accounts.
So I think login.gov, I can look through that first real quick, and then I can get back to you. I need to poke around in there for a second.
Thank you.
Other questions while I do that?
Just so everyone knows, there's a link to the Bring Your Own Biosketch shop in the chat, so you can go ahead and register there if you'd like to attend.
Oh, did that one go there too? I put the ORCiD one in there. I need to get the, okay, so for login.gov. So I think login.gov, if you go to your connected accounts.
Yes, it shows that you below is a list you have connected, nothing shows up.
So the way that you do that is to actually use your login.gov account to log into those platforms. So you would go to ERA Commons, and when you log into ERA Commons, use login.gov the first time. And that will then show that you connected it here, but I don't think you can link it the other direction, if that makes sense. So login.gov is just a way for you to use a two-factor authentication to get into any federal website.
Use login.
So I'll show you what mine looks like.
Please.
So these, oh, sorry. These are websites that I have used, login.gov. Oh, just kidding. Hold on. These are websites that I have used login.gov to log into. And so it shows when I first logged into grants.gov, for example, with my login.gov credentials. And then also for ERA Commons, this was the first date that I used my login.gov credentials to log in. So if you go to ERA Commons, and you click this login with login.gov, it's going to ask you to confirm because it's a two-factor authentication, and hit continue. And then if you're already logged in there, you should be able to just hit continue, or you'll add in your credentials there. And then you're in your ERA Commons account. And then once you do that and you go back here and you reload, it should hopefully show up that you have done, that you've linked that login.gov account to your ERA Commons profile.
Thank you. This is very helpful. I am able to use login.gov to log into my ERA Commons. So
Great.
that's that it linked automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go back to my login.gov, should I be able to see ERA Commons shows up over there?
In your linked accounts, yeah,
Let me try.
or your connected accounts, sorry.
Yeah, I feel it's handy because you have multiple institutes, you have multiple places with one place. I think that really streamlines lots of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, again, it's nice that you can have an option that's not tied to your institution, that you get to maintain regardless of where you end up.
Can I use login.gov to connect with NCBI bibliography or no?
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, you can use it to log into MyNCBI, yes.
Oh.
Yep, any federal agency website, USDA, DOD, grants.gov, NSF, all of them.
Excellent.
If you have a loan repayment program account, you can use it for the LRP portal.
I also want to ask about basically how to link ORCiD to NCBI. I have everything NCBI, but I do not want to manually input that into ORCiD. If I can link both, then I suppose the file will be transferred automatically.
Renee, did you have any luck with going backwards from NCBI to ORCiD?
No, I think that this kind of thing, I think we should probably have a consultation to work through these, because there's a lot of things we need to work through.
Yeah, okay.
Because it worked for me, so it's hard to I couldn't replicate the issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, reach out to Renee directly after this, and then y'all can set up a one-on-one to work through your accounts.
Thank you.
For the question about whether there will be a virtual option for the peer review, you're welcome to send me any Biosketch documents, and I can help review those for you. But that particular event will just be in person. And we hope that if the peer review cafe goes well, we can make it a regular thing and use it for other types of applications and different attachments and documents. And yes, so everything that we've done today will be shared on the on-demand learning page for the Office of Research Development. And I can also share the PowerPoint to everybody by email before those are live on our website, just so that you have that information now. But again, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Renee, or Semi, and we'd be happy to help you work through this process.
Thank you very much. This is very helpful.
I'm glad. All right, last call for questions before I stop recording. Okay.